All right, so now what we want to talk about is some of what we're calling display controls. So in the last video, we talked about view control, which, showing you how to pan and zoom. But now what we want to show you is how to turn data on and off. The first thing that you'll notice or take a look at over here in the what's called the Project Explorer, and that is shown by clicking on one of these tabs down here. If you don't see this Project Explorer over here, then simply go to your quick access toolbar and click on this Project Explorer, or you can press F9, or you can click on this button here as well. What this shows when you select it is I can see the listing, in this case, the listing of points I have. So I've got my control points. I can double click on that, and that's going to take me over to my properties. So here I can see what point number it is, any other information if I want to add a description about it, what feature codes used, and how it's displayed. So right now you can see that it's got show label, feature, and show elevation, right? So they're based on the view filter. The view filter is this tab here, which controls that information as well, such as turning the layers on and off, which we'll get to in a second. If we look at surfaces, here's the surface. You'll notice that when I select on this or any of these objects, it actually highlights it and selects it in the plan view and the 3D view, right? So it selects it in the project. If I go to finish ground, you can see it picks up that surface. If I right click on this and go to properties, I can look at the properties of the surface. So I can turn on and off certain characteristics or certain components of the surface, whether it's in plan view or in 3D view. So if I want to turn off the wireframe in plan view, then I would come over here to where it says show in plan view, and I would turn that and set that to no, and now it turns off the triangles in this view but keeps them in the 3D view. Even if I left click in the plan view to deselect the object, you'll see that it still keeps the triangles in the 3D view but not in the plan view. If I go back to my Project Explorer, I can select that surface again, or I can pick it in the 3D view. I can then go back to my properties and I can turn those triangles back on. I can also turn off vertices, break lines, shading, so you can see that I have shading in my 3D view but not in my plan view. If I want to see it in my plan view, I can simply just tell it that I want to see by surface color, which would then show everything basically in green, which is the color of the surface up here. Or I can come down here and set it to elevation, and that shows you that my lower elevation in blue and my higher elevation being up here in red. Some other features that I can turn objects on and off with is on the View Filter Manager. So with the View Filter Manager, you can see that we have what are known as layers. The basic layers that you see here are the layers that were created from the DXF file that we brought in. So I can turn those off simply by clicking on this checkbox, and that turns off all the DXF information, all the line work. If I come down here, you'll see I have another category for surfaces, and if I turn that off, it turns off the surface. If I come back up to this, I can turn the layers back on, so it's turning on all the layers. So you're seeing I got my 3D lines and my 2D lines, but then I can come in here and I can turn off the points. I can turn those back on. I can turn off my curbing, okay? And then I can also turn off the finished ground, right? So the finished ground, it looks like all my 3D lines that make up my surface. And here is just my 2D information, my 2D line work. So you can see that I've got my 1A curb and my 1B curb. So you can just turn those on and off. Now another thing that you can do with the surface is you can select the surface, right click, and toggle its visibility, basically turning it off. to turn it back on, you have to go to the View Filter Manager to turn it back on. So that's just some basics of the View Filter Manager. There's a lot more that it can do, and we'll get into that in future videos as well.